Hi, it's me. I'm back again. It's time for us to talk about Chapter 7, good old Medicaid and other state programs. So, pull open your book. Let's take a look at page 124. That's where we're at. You can see our objectives, you can see the key terms and the abbreviations we're going to cover. Medicaid is not an insurance program so much as it is an assistance program. So that's probably the best way to look at it. It does have a component of insurance to it, but it's really greater, more involved than just being insurance like Medicare is. It's really meant to be assistance on a number of levels. So you can read through, and we can always talk about next week the history behind it if that's of concern or interest. It talks about the different Medicaid programs and the groups who are eligible for Medicaid benefits. If you look on page 125, box 7.1 has a really good detail of who's eligible for Medicaid benefits and how that works out. You'll notice that CHIP is included in here, Children's Health Insurance Program, and that's a partnership between the feds and the state. Medicaid is really a partnership between the feds and the state. Federal dollars come into the state matches those or increases those significantly, and then the states administer Medicaid, but the federal government checks on it. So there are some auditing activities that happen with the federal government for the states for Medicaid to make sure that the program's being administered the way that it should and that the dollars are getting to the people who need them, and that there's not fraud, abuse, waste, those types of things going on. So just be aware that Medicaid, while Medicare is a federal program, national federal program, that's not administered by the state, it's administered by the federal government through private companies sometimes, like those MACs we talked about in the last video. Medicaid is different. It is administered by the states. So each state has really its own version of Medicaid in many ways. They have some overarching requirements that they have to meet for the federal government, but each state kind of has its own flavor, so to speak, of what that is. So just be aware of that. And CHIP is part of that. That's really the children's piece of Medicaid. There's Medicaid for adults, Medicaid for children, Medicaid for other groups that you'll see in here. Aged, blind, disabled. Some of those are still covered under Medicaid. So flipping the page to page 126, it finishes talking about CHIP, and then it goes into the Medicare Savings Program, MSPs. Talks about what those are and what the purpose of those are. There's 4 types of MSPs run by state Medicaid programs, and each one addresses a different financial category. So you have your qualified Medicare beneficiary program, your specified low-income Medicare beneficiary program, qualifying individual program, and qualified disabled and working individuals programs. So that's all under Medicare Savings Program, MSPs. Then you have Medicaid qualified Medicare beneficiary programs. Gee, not to get confusing or anything, is it? But anyway, it'll go on and talk about those and how those work out and who's covered by what and what the purpose of each one of those is. So be reading pages 126, 127. 127 goes into Medicaid eligibility. Now, Medicare eligibility is fairly easy to determine, and it doesn't change. Basically, it's an age-related benefit. Now, Medicaid has to do with income, because remember, Medicaid is about assistance. And as someone's financial picture changes, their Medicaid benefits can change as well. So on a monthly basis, you have to check and see if someone still has their Medicaid. That's different than Medicare. Medicare is pretty much a one and done kind of deal unless something changes. You might have to see, is it still a primary payer versus secondary payer? But with Medicaid, someone can be on Medicaid this month but be off of it next month. So that's why you're always having to check their benefits differently and more frequently than you would on a Medicare patient. So it goes into eligibility, verifying eligibility, and the different categories. That goes into page 128. And it talks about when someone participates with Medicaid. Someone can choose to participate with Medicare and not choose to participate with Medicaid, and others can choose to participate with both. So again, you kind of have to know what's going on with your provider and what their purpose, where are they at with all this coverage, and what are they doing in terms of participating, non-participating with Medicare and Medicaid. So it talks about program participation, identification card, Medicaid identification card, point of service machine that is used to verify eligibility. Again, as we talked about, there is such a thing as retroactive eligibility. And I have mostly seen that done in hospitals where someone's in the hospital already and they realize, oh, you're eligible for Medicare, or you're eligible for Medicare and Medicaid, and they sign them up and they agree that retroactively they will pay for that hospital bill. But that's also true on the outpatient side of life, that if you have a patient who comes in and they are eligible for Medicaid, they can go get benefits and have it retroactively applied to the visit that they're having today. Even if they don't get approved for benefits till next month, it can be retroed back. So just keep that in mind as well. So page 130 is really good about listing, box 7.2 lists the basic Medicaid benefits. Well worth just skimming through there, familiarizing yourself with those so that you understand those. And then it talks about covered services, screening, diagnosis, treatment, disallowed services, and then it goes into managed care and what that is. Claim procedures, this is where we're going to get into co-payment, prior approval, hospital-acquired conditions, all sorts of other things like that. You'll want to go through all of those and make sure that you're at least familiar with the content of what's in the textbook. And then figure 7.4 is an example of an completed treatment authorization request form. Now this is for California, but essentially they're going to be very similar state to state. So this gives you an idea of what it is. And it talks through all of that. Then there's a section on page 133 about after claim submission. Again, that RA, that remittance advice that's going to come through. And then what do you do? How do you appeal if there's something going on and you need to appeal? So pages 134 and 135 give you examples of an explanation of payments and a remittance advice showing adjustments and that sort of thing, just so you can familiarize yourself with those. There is a whole chapter, I believe, that we'll get to that has the 1500 claim form and some of the other things that we're doing, but it really helps, especially as you look at your workbook, to take a look at this information. So just make sure you familiarize yourself with the two chapters. And I'm going to do another video, a third one today, that has to do with your workbooks, because I think it gets kind of complex on a couple of those assignments. So I'm going to say goodbye for now. I'll be back one more time since we didn't get to meet in person today. I missed you guys. It seems very strange to be Monday and not be with you, but we'll make it. We'll make it work. So I'll be back shortly. Take care.